After 3 years of sacrifice, my husband's father, the boss, gave the promotion to his niece who'd only been there 8 weeks. I handed in my resignation with a calm smile. "Congrats to Lily," I said. When my father-in-law read my letter, he lost it. "You can't be serious," he shouted, his face turning red as Arthur's voice boomed across the conference room as he raised his champagne glass. "I'm thrilled to announce our new regional director, my brilliant niece, Lily Monroe." The applause erupted around me, but I couldn't move. My hands stayed frozen in my lap while everyone else clapped enthusiastically. 8 weeks. Lily had been here exactly 8 weeks, and she was getting the position I'd been promised for 3 years. I forced my mouth into what I hoped looked like a smile and brought my hands together in slow, deliberate claps. The sound felt hollow like everything else in that moment. Arthur's eyes met mine briefly across the table, and I saw something flicker there, guilt maybe, or defiance. Either way, he looked away quickly. "Amy has been such a wonderful mentor to Lily already," he continued, his voice carrying that patronizing tone I'd grown to despise. "I know she'll continue to support our new director in any way she can." Support. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, 3 years of missing family dinners to close deals, 3 years of building this department from 12 employees to 47. And now I was supposed to support someone else stepping into my role. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these stories that matter. If you believe that loyalty should be valued over family politics in the workplace, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. Lily stood up, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her designer suit crisp and expensive. She couldn't have been more than 28, fresh out of business school with her MBA and daddy's connections. "Thank you so much, Uncle Arthur. I'm really excited to learn from Amy's expertise as we transition into this new phase." Learn from my expertise. Transition. The corporate speak made my stomach churn. This wasn't a transition. This was a takeover. After the meeting dispersed, I walked back to my office on unsteady legs. My nameplate still read Amy Hayes, Senior Operations Manager, but it felt like a lie now. I'd been passed over and everyone in that room knew it. Some looked sympathetic, others avoided eye contact entirely. Margaret from accounting patted my shoulder as she walked by, whispering, "I'm so sorry, honey." I closed my office door and sat behind my desk, staring at the wall where I'd hung my Employee of the Year certificates. 3 of them, 1 for each year I'd been here. Fat lot of good they'd done me. My phone buzzed with a text from Joseph, my husband. "How did the announcement go?" "Finally official." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "We'll talk tonight." The rest of the day passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I answered emails, reviewed reports, attended meetings where people kept shooting me looks of pity mixed with embarrassment. By 5 o'clock my jaw ached from maintaining that fake smile. Arthur appeared in my doorway just as I was packing up. "Amy, could I have a word?" "Of course." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where he'd sat 3 months ago promising me this promotion was just a formality. He settled his large frame into the seat, his silver hair catching the overhead light. "I know today was difficult for you." "Was it?" I kept my voice level, professional. "Look, you're incredibly valuable to this company. Lily's going to need someone with your experience to help her get up to speed. I'm hoping you'll take on a senior advisory role too. Train her to do my job. Help her succeed in her new position," he corrected, but we both knew what he meant. I leaned back in my chair, studying this man who'd been my father-in-law for 8 years. I'd always respected Arthur, admired his business acumen, appreciated how he'd welcomed me into the family. But sitting there watching him try to spin this betrayal into some kind of opportunity, I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Arthur, can I ask you something?" "Of course. 3 months ago you told me this promotion was mine. You said I'd earned it, that no one deserved it more. What changed?" He shifted uncomfortably, his hands fidgeting with his wedding ring. "Business needs evolved. Lily brings fresh perspective, new ideas. 8 weeks of fresh perspective versus 3 years of proven results. Amy, you're taking this too personally." "Too personally?" I almost laughed. "This is my career we're talking about. My life. How else should I take it?" "Your family," he said as if that explained everything. "Family looks out for each other." Lily needed this opportunity and frankly you're secure here. You don't need the promotion like she does. There was the real truth. I was family, which meant I was expected to sacrifice for the good of everyone else. I was supposed to be grateful for the scraps, content with being dependable Amy who'd always be there to clean up everyone else's messes. I see. I stood up, gathering my purse and jacket. Well, I should get home. Joseph's making dinner tonight. Arthur looked relieved at the change of subject. Give my son my love. And Amy? I really do appreciate your understanding about all this. I nodded and walked out, my heels clicking against the marble floor of the lobby. Understanding. That's what he called it when someone rolled over and accepted being stabbed in the back. The drive home felt endless. Traffic crawled along the highway, giving me too much time to think. I kept replaying Arthur's words, his casual dismissal of 3 years of my life. Family looks out for each other, except when it came to looking out for me, apparently. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the sun was setting. Joseph's car was already there and I could see warm light glowing from our kitchen windows. Home had always been my sanctuary, the place where I could shed the corporate mask and just be myself. But tonight even that felt tainted. How could I face Joseph and tell him his father had just destroyed my career with a smile and a champagne toast? I sat in the car for another 5 minutes, watching our neighbors walk their dogs and water their gardens. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that my world had just shifted completely off its axis. Tomorrow I'd have to walk back into that office and pretend everything was fine. I'd have to train my replacement with grace and professionalism, all while my heart broke a little more each day. But tonight I just needed to sit in this car and feel the full weight of what had happened. Tomorrow I'd figure out what came next. Joseph had already set the table when I finally walked through the front door. The smell of his famous lasagna filled the kitchen, but for the first time in years I had no appetite. He took one look at my face and immediately pulled out a chair. Sit down. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the champagne toast, about Arthur's casual dismissal of my 3 years, about being expected to train my own replacement. Joseph's jaw tightened with each detail, his knuckles white as he gripped his wine glass. Dad actually said you were secure here so you didn't need the promotion? His voice carried a dangerous edge I rarely heard. Word for word. Joseph pushed back from the table, running his hands through his dark hair. I'm calling him right now. No. I reached across and grabbed his wrist. This isn't your fight, honey. It's mine. But the damage was done. The conversation I dreaded having was over, and now Joseph was furious at his own father. Another casualty of Arthur's decision. The next morning I walked into the office with a fake smile plastered on my face, ready to begin what Arthur called my mentoring role. Lily bounced into my office at exactly 9 o'clock, armed with a color-coded planner and an enthusiasm that made my teeth ache. Amy, I'm so excited to learn from you. Uncle Arthur says you know this department better than anyone. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Let's start with the Morrison account. They're our biggest client, and they've been with us since before you were born. For the next 2 hours, I walked Lily through our client management system, explaining the intricate relationships I'd built, the preferences of each contact, the delicate balance required to keep everyone happy. She scribbled notes frantically, asking questions that revealed just how little she understood about the business. So when Mr. Morrison calls upset about delivery delays, what do? You don't promise anything you can't deliver. You listen, acknowledge his concerns, and give him a realistic timeline with a small buffer built in. But what if he threatens to take his business elsewhere? I paused, studying her perfectly made-up face. She genuinely had no idea what she was dealing with. Lily Morrison Industries represents 30% of our annual revenue. If we lose them because of poor handling, 47 people lose their jobs. Including you. Her pen stopped moving. Oh. By lunch my patience was wearing thin. Everything I'd spent years learning through trial and error, I was now expected to download into someone who'd never even read a quarterly report. But the real breaking point came during what should have been my lunch break. I was heating up leftover soup in the break room when I heard familiar voices coming from Arthur's office next door. The walls in this old building were notoriously thin, and Arthur's booming voice carried easily through the shared wall. The transition is going perfectly, he was saying. Lily's picking everything up quickly. Are you sure Amy's okay with all this? That was Lily's voice, younger and uncertain. I moved closer to the wall, my soup forgotten on the counter. Amy's been dependable, but we need someone with fresh ideas. Lily's our future. Arthur's words hit me like ice water. She's good at following instructions, maintaining the status quo, but that's not what we need anymore. The company needs innovation energy. You bring that. But she seems so knowledgeable about everything. Some of the clients specifically ask for her. Arthur chuckled and the sound made my stomach turn. That's exactly the problem. Amy's become a crutch for our clients. They're too comfortable with her. We need to shake things up, get them used to working with someone who'll challenge their thinking instead of just agreeing with everything they say. Challenge their thinking. I'd spent 3 years building relationships based on trust and reliability, and Arthur saw that as a weakness. My carefully cultivated client relationships weren't assets. They were obstacles to his vision of the future. What about her feelings? Lily pressed. She worked really hard for this promotion. Amy's family. She'll understand that sometimes we have to make decisions that serve the greater good. Besides, she's not going anywhere. Where else would she go at her age? She's 42, Lily. Companies want young talent, fresh perspectives. We're doing her a favor by keeping her on. At my age. 42 and apparently over the hill. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white, fighting the urge to march into that office and tell Arthur exactly what I thought of his greater good. I just feel bad, Lily continued. She's been so nice about training me and I can tell she's hurt. That's because you have a good heart. But business isn't about feelings. Amy will adapt. He always does. That's what makes her valuable. She's predictable, reliable. She'll do whatever we ask because she doesn't have any other choice. Predictable. Reliable. No other choice. I grabbed my soup and walked back to my office, my hands shaking with rage. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger, but the cold, calculating fury that settles in your bones and changes everything. For 3 years I'd believed I was building something meaningful. I'd thought my loyalty and dedication mattered. But I was just the hired help, keeping things running smoothly until the real leadership could take over. Arthur saw me as a placeholder, a babysitter for his clients until his precious niece was ready to take the reins. And the worst part? He was right about one thing. I had been predictable. I'd absorbed every slight, swallowed every disappointment, smiled through every humiliation because I believed it would eventually pay off. But sitting in my office, staring at my Employee of the Year certificates while Arthur's words echoed in my head, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. I wasn't the same person who'd walked into this building that morning. The woman who'd spent 3 years proving her worth to people who would never see it was gone. That afternoon I continued training Lily with the same professional demeanor, but inside something new was taking shape. Every question she asked, every gap in her knowledge that I filled, every client relationship I explained in detail, I was documenting my own value. Not for Arthur's benefit but for my own clarity. When 5 o'clock came I packed up my things with deliberate calm. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, I was certain. But tonight I had some serious thinking to do about what came next. That evening I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a cup of tea growing cold beside me. Joseph was working late, which gave me the quiet I needed to do what I'd been thinking about for 2 weeks. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before I began typing. Dear Arthur, please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation from my position as Senior Operations Manager at Alden Ventures. My last day of employment will be Friday, March 15th, providing the standard 2 weeks notice. I want to thank you for the opportunities I've had here over the past 3 years. I've learned a great deal and am grateful for the experience. I wish the company continued success in the future. Sincerely, Amy Hayes. Short. Professional. Final. I read it 3 times, each time feeling a strange sense of peace settle over me. There was no anger in those words, no accusations or emotional outbursts. Just a clean, dignified exit from a situation that had become impossible to bear. I printed the letter on our home printer, signed it with my favorite pen, and slipped it into a crisp white envelope. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in weeks. The next morning I dressed with extra care, my navy blue power suit, the one that always made me feel confident, paired with my grandmother's pearl earrings. If this was going to be a memorable day, I wanted to look the part. I arrived at the office early before most people and placed the envelope in the center of my desk. Then I went about my morning routine as if nothing had changed. I answered emails, reviewed reports, and even helped Tom from accounting fix a spreadsheet formula. At exactly 10 o'clock, I picked up the envelope and walked to Arthur's office. His secretary, Marie, looked up with her usual warm smile. "Good morning, Amy. He's just finishing up a call. No rush. I'll wait." Marie had been Arthur's secretary for 15 years and she'd always been kind to me. I wondered if she'd miss our brief morning chats about her grandchildren and my weekend plans. Probably not. Secretaries saw people come and go all the time. Arthur's door opened and he emerged looking harried, his phone still pressed to his ear. He waved me in while continuing his conversation about quarterly projections. I sat in the familiar chair across from his desk and waited. When he finally hung up, he looked at me with barely concealed impatience. "What can I do for you, Amy? I've got back-to-back meetings until 3. I placed the envelope on his desk without a word. He stared at it for a moment, then looked at me with confusion. "What's this?" "Open it." Arthur tore open the envelope with his letter opener, unfolded the paper and read. I watched his expression shift from mild curiosity to shock to something approaching panic. His face went through several color changes, pale then flushed then red. "You can't be serious?" The words exploded out of him as he shot to his feet, the chair rolling backward. "This is a joke, right? Some kind of negotiating tactic." I remained seated, my hands folded calmly in my lap. "I'm completely serious. Amy, we just promoted Lily 2 weeks ago. You can't abandon ship now. She needs your guidance, your expertise. The Morrison account alone. We'll be fine. Lily's very enthusiastic. I'm sure she'll figure it out." Arthur began pacing behind his desk, running his hands through his silver hair. "This is about the promotion, isn't it? Look, I know you're disappointed, but we can discuss other opportunities. Maybe a different title, additional responsibilities." "Arthur, stop." He froze mid-pace. I'd never used that tone with him before. Calm but absolute. "This isn't about the promotion anymore. This is about respect. And the fact that I've realized I don't have any here." "That's not true. You're valued, Amy. Your family." I stood up slowly, smoothing down my skirt. "No, I'm not. Family would have been honest with me about their plans. Family wouldn't have let me train my replacement without telling me that's what I was doing. Family wouldn't have described me as predictable and reliable behind my back while talking about how I have no other options." Arthur's face went white. "You heard that conversation. Every word." The silence stretched between us, heavy with 3 years of unspoken truths. Arthur sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. "Amy, please. Let's talk about this rationally. Whatever you heard, you might have misunderstood." I understood perfectly. I moved toward the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. "You were right about one thing, though. I have been predictable. I've spent 3 years making excuses for being overlooked, convinced myself that my loyalty would eventually pay off. But I'm done being predictable. What do you want? More money? A corner office? Name it." I turned back to look at him one last time. "I want to work somewhere that values what I bring to the table. Somewhere that sees potential instead of limitations. Somewhere that doesn't think 42 is too old to have fresh ideas." Arthur opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking out the door. Marie looked up as I passed her desk, concern written across her face. She'd obviously heard Arthur's raised voice. "Everything okay, honey?" I paused and smiled at her, a real smile this time. "Everything's going to be just fine, Marie. Take care of yourself." Walking back to my office, I felt lighter than I had in months. The decision was made, the words were spoken, and there was no going back. I had 2 weeks to wrap up my projects, document my processes, and transition my responsibilities. 2 weeks to say goodbye to a chapter of my life that had taught me more about myself than I'd ever expected to learn. The phone on my desk was already ringing when I sat down. Word traveled fast in a small office, and I suspected the next 2 weeks were going to be very interesting indeed. But for the first time since that awful day in the conference room, I was looking forward to what came next. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reorganizing my home office. I'd been unemployed for exactly 2 weeks, spending my days updating my resume, networking on LinkedIn, and trying to figure out what came next. The phone number wasn't familiar, but something made me answer instead of letting it go to voicemail. "Amy Hayes. This is Rebecca Chin from Horizon Tech. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Horizon Tech was one of the fastest-growing companies in the region, known for their innovative approach to logistics and their reputation for promoting from within based on merit alone. Not at all. How can I help you? I'll cut straight to the chase. Your name came up in a conversation with Daniel Morrison yesterday. He spoke very highly of your work at Alden Ventures and suggested we reach out. Daniel Morrison. Of course. The client I'd nurtured for 3 years, whose trust I'd earned through countless late nights and weekend calls. I'd wondered if he'd even notice I was gone. That's very kind of him, I managed. We have an opening for a regional operations director, essentially overseeing 3 departments and managing our largest client accounts. Daniel seems to think you'd be perfect for it. Would you be interested in hearing more? My heart started racing. This wasn't just any job, it was exactly what I should have gotten at Alden Ventures, but bigger. Better. I'd be very interested. Within an hour, I had an email with preliminary details that made my eyes widen. The salary was 30% higher than what I'd been making. The benefits package included stock options. And the title, Regional Operations Director, was what I'd been promised but never received. The interview process moved quickly. Rebecca introduced me to the team leads I'd potentially manage, all of whom seemed genuinely excited about working together. The company culture was refreshingly direct. No hidden agendas or family politics, just clear expectations and transparent communication. During my final interview with the CEO Marcus Williams, he asked me something that caught me off guard. Why did you leave Alden Ventures? Daniel mentioned you'd been there for several years. I'd practiced answering this question, but sitting across from Marcus, a man known for building his company on merit rather than connections, I decided on honesty. I reached a ceiling that had nothing to do with my performance or potential. Sometimes you realize that loyalty without respect is just servitude. Marcus nodded slowly. We don't believe in ceilings here, Amy. We believe in earned advancement and mutual respect. Does that sound like something you could work with? It sounds like everything I've been looking for. 3 days later, Rebecca called with an offer that exceeded even my best-case scenario. As I read through the contract, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement about going to work. My first day at Horizon Tech felt like stepping into a different universe. The building was modern and bright with open collaborative spaces and technology that actually worked. But more importantly, from the moment I walked in, I felt welcomed as a valued team member rather than tolerated as a necessary burden. My direct report, Sarah Martinez, had been running operations temporarily and could have resented my arrival. Instead, she greeted me with a comprehensive briefing on current projects and a genuine enthusiasm for collaboration. I've been looking forward to this, she said as we reviewed the quarterly projections. Rebecca told me about your experience with large-scale client management. We've been struggling with the Anderson Group account and frankly we could use your expertise. Expertise. Not dependability or reliability, expertise. The difference was profound. Within my first week I was leading strategy meetings and making decisions that had immediate impact. When I suggested restructuring our client communication protocols based on lessons learned at Alden Ventures, Marcus not only listened but asked me to present the proposal to the board. You've been doing this for 3 years? He asked after my presentation. And your previous employer never promoted you to director level? Apparently I was too predictable for leadership. Marcus laughed, not at me but at the absurdity of it. Their loss is our gain. Predictability in results is exactly what we want in leadership. The Anderson Group meeting was my first major test. They'd been threatening to leave Horizon Tech for months, frustrated with communication breakdowns and missed deadlines. I spent 2 days preparing, drawing on every client relationship skill I'd developed over the years. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, not only had we retained their business, but they'd agreed to expand their contract by 40%. How did you do that? Sarah asked as we walked back to the office. I listened to what they actually needed instead of what I thought they should want. Then I showed them exactly how we could deliver it. Word of the Anderson success spread quickly through the company. Suddenly, other department heads were asking for my input on their client relationships. Marcus started including me in executive strategy sessions. You know, he said after one particularly productive meeting, I'm starting to think we undervalued this position when we created it. Would you be interested in discussing expanded responsibilities? Expanded responsibilities. At Alden Ventures, that phrase had always meant more work for the same recognition. Here it felt like genuine opportunity. By the end of my first month, I was managing not just operations but also heading up a new client retention initiative. My team had grown from 12 people to 18, and our department's performance metrics were the highest they'd been in 2 years. Every morning when I walked into Horizon Tech, I was reminded of what it felt like to work somewhere that valued contribution over connections. My ideas weren't just heard, they were implemented. My experience wasn't just acknowledged, it was leveraged for company growth. The contrast with my old job was striking. At Alden Ventures, I'd spent 3 years trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I was dispensable. At Horizon Tech, my worth was assumed, and the focus was on how to maximize my contribution to our collective success. For the first time in my professional life, I understood what it meant to work at a company that truly valued merit over politics. 3 months into my new position at Horizon Tech, the industry gossip started reaching me through unexpected channels. At a quarterly networking event, I bumped into Janet Mills from Pacific Financial, one of Alden Ventures' smaller clients. "Amy, I heard you moved to Horizon Tech. Good for you." Her tone carried something more than casual congratulations. "Things have been interesting since you left." I kept my expression neutral. "Oh. Well, let's just say our new contact at Alden Ventures isn't quite as responsive as you were. 3 weeks to return a call? That never happened when you were handling our account." Before I could respond, she was pulled away by another colleague, but her words stuck with me. 3 weeks to return a call. I'd always prided myself on same-day responses. The next piece of information came from an even more unexpected source. Daniel Morrison called me directly at Horizon Tech 2 weeks later. "Amy, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I have a professional question, but I also wanted to give you a heads up about something." "Of course, Daniel. What's going on?" "We're probably going to be ending our relationship with Alden Ventures at the end of this quarter." My stomach dropped. Morrison Industries was Alden Ventures' largest client. Losing them would be devastating. "I'm sorry to hear that. May I ask what happened?" Daniel sighed heavily. "Remember how we used to have those monthly strategy calls, where you'd walk me through the quarterly projections and we'd adjust our approach based on market changes?" "Of course. Well, your replacement, Lily, I think, she missed our last 2 scheduled calls entirely. When she finally called back, she couldn't answer basic questions about our account status. She kept saying she'd get back to me with information, but those follow-ups never came." I closed my eyes, imagining Arthur's reaction when he learned about Morrison's decision. The final straw was last week. "We had a delivery crisis. Remember how you used to handle those? Drop everything, coordinate with logistics, keep us updated every hour until it was resolved." "I remember. Lily told us to file a complaint through the proper channels and she'd look into it when she had time." "Amy, we're talking about a $2 million shipment that was sitting in the wrong warehouse. She treated it like a paperwork issue." I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite untangle. Satisfaction that my value was being proven, but also genuine sadness for the company I'd once cared about so deeply. "I'm sorry it came to that, Daniel. I know Arthur valued your partnership." "That's the thing, I don't think he did. When I called to speak with him directly about our concerns, he basically told me that Lily represented the new direction of the company, and if we couldn't adapt to their new approach, maybe we weren't the right fit anymore." My jaw dropped. Arthur had essentially invited his biggest client to leave rather than acknowledge that promoting Lily had been a mistake. "Anyway," Daniel continued, "I wanted you to know that our decision has nothing to do with any animosity toward Alden Ventures as a whole. It's purely about service quality. Amy, the recommendation I gave Horizon Tech about hiring you? Best business advice I've given in years." After we hung up, I sat in my office processing what I'd learned. Losing Morrison Industries would force Alden Ventures to lay off at least 15 people. These weren't abstract business consequences. These were real people I'd worked alongside for 3 years. My assistant knocked on my door. "Amy, Rebecca Chin would like to see you when you have a moment." I found Rebecca in her office with a stack of industry reports spread across her desk. "Sit down, Amy. I've been hearing some interesting things about your former employer." My heart sank. Had word gotten back to Horizon Tech about Alden Ventures' problems? Was this somehow going to reflect poorly on me? The Morrison account was a nice win for us, she continued, but apparently they're not the only Alden Ventures client looking for alternatives. We've had 3 companies reach out this week asking about our services. All of them specifically mentioned your name. Relief flooded through me. Really? Seems like you left quite an impression during your time there. The question is, how do you want to handle this? These could be significant opportunities for Horizon Tech, but I want to make sure we're approaching this ethically. I appreciated Rebecca's consideration. I think as long as we're responding to genuine inquiries rather than actively poaching clients, we're on solid ground. These companies have legitimate service concerns that we can address. My thoughts exactly. Would you be comfortable leading the presentations for these potential new accounts? Absolutely. Over the next month, Horizon Tech signed 4 new clients, all former Alden Ventures accounts. Each presentation followed the same pattern. Companies frustrated with declining service quality, missed deadlines, and poor communication. I found myself defending the Alden Ventures team even as I pitched our services. They're going through a transition period, I'd explained diplomatically. But at Horizon Tech, we can offer you the consistency and reliability you're looking for. The most difficult moment came when Margaret from accounting, my old colleague at Alden Ventures, called me at home one evening. Amy, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Joseph. Of course not, Margaret. How are you? Honestly, there are rumors about layoffs. The Morrison account is gone, and apparently 3 other major clients have left too. Her voice was shaky. People are saying it's because you left that you took all the client relationships with you. Margaret, that's not. I'm not blaming you, she interrupted. I understand why you left. We all saw how they treated you. But Amy, some of us here have been with the company for years. We have mortgages, kids in college. If Alden Ventures goes under, the weight of unintended consequences settled on my shoulders. I'd wanted Arthur to realize my value, but I'd never wanted good people to suffer for his poor decisions. Are you looking for other opportunities? I asked gently. At my age? Who's going to hire a 58-year-old accountant? I thought about Horizon Tech's expansion plans, about the new positions we'd be creating as we grew. Margaret, can I give Rebecca Chin your contact information? We're going to need experienced financial support as we take on these new accounts. The relief in her voice was audible. Amy, you do that. You're good at what you do. That should matter more than politics or age. After I hung up, I realized something had shifted in how I viewed the situation. This wasn't about Alden Ventures' decline anymore. It was about people finding places where their contributions were valued. Some of my former colleagues would land on their feet, possibly in better situations than before. But Arthur's lesson was becoming clear to everyone in the industry. When you prioritize connections over competence, you don't just lose good employees, you lose the foundation that keeps a business stable. 6 months after Margaret joined our team at Horizon Tech, I received an invitation that stopped me cold. It was embossed cardstock, formal and elegant. Arthur Alden requests the pleasure of your company at the Alden Ventures annual awards dinner. I stared at the invitation for a long moment, wondering what game Arthur was playing now. Joseph found me in the kitchen that evening, turning the card over in my hands. You're not seriously considering going, he said, reading over my shoulder. Actually, I think I am. He looked at me as if I'd suggested swimming with sharks. Amy, why would you put yourself through that? Because I'm not the same person who left that company in tears. I want to see who I've become. The dinner was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, the same venue where I'd attended these events for 3 years running. But walking in that night, everything felt different. I wore a new dress, emerald green silk that made me feel confident and powerful. More importantly, I carried myself differently. Rebecca had insisted on coming with me. Moral support, she'd said, though I suspected she was also curious about the company that had been foolish enough to let me go. The cocktail hour was awkward as I'd expected. Former colleagues approached with careful smiles and cautious conversation. Some seemed genuinely happy to see me thriving, while others appeared uncomfortable, as if my success somehow reflected poorly on their decision to stay. Tom from accounting cornered me near the bar. Amy, we all miss you. Things haven't been the same since you left. How is everyone adjusting? I asked diplomatically. Well, Margaret landing that position at Horizon Tech was great for her. And honestly, it's inspired some of us to start looking around too. Sometimes you don't realize you're settling until you see someone else refuse to. Before I could respond, the lights dimmed and Arthur took the stage. He looked older than I remembered, his silver hair thinner, his face more lined. The confident business leader I'd once respected seemed diminished somehow. "Welcome everyone to what has been a challenging but educational year for Alden Ventures," he began. "We've learned valuable lessons about adaptation, about the importance of strong leadership, and about recognizing talent wherever it may be found." His eyes found mine in the crowd, and for a moment, neither of us looked away. "This year we're honoring employees who've shown exceptional dedication during difficult times. People who stepped up when we needed them most." The awards ceremony proceeded as usual. Recognition for sales achievements, customer service excellence, innovation in problem solving. But something felt forced about the whole production, as if Arthur was trying to recreate past success through sheer willpower. Then came the surprise. "Our final award tonight is new," Arthur announced. "The excellence in leadership recognition goes to someone who may no longer be with our company, but whose impact continues to shape how we do business." My stomach dropped. "Amy Hayes, would you please come to the stage?" The room erupted in applause, but I remained frozen in my seat. Rebecca nudged me gently. "Go on. This is your moment." Walking to that stage felt like the longest journey of my life. Arthur met me halfway, extending a crystal award that caught the ballroom lights. "Amy, your dedication to excellence and your commitment to our clients set a standard that continues to inspire our team. While we're sorry to see you've moved on to new opportunities, we want to acknowledge the foundation you built here." I took the microphone, looking out at faces I'd worked alongside for 3 years. Some were smiling, others looked uncomfortable, and a few, like Lily sitting at Arthur's family table, appeared downright mortified. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Working at Alden Ventures taught me valuable lessons about business, about relationships, and most importantly, about knowing your own worth." I paused, letting that sink in. "I've learned that loyalty is important, but it should never be one-sided. That hard work matters, but only when it's recognized and valued. And that sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself and for your career is to walk away from situations that no longer serve your growth." The applause was more scattered this time, uncertain. "I'm grateful for my time here because it led me to where I am now, at a company that values merit over politics, where ideas are heard regardless of who suggests them, and where potential isn't limited by artificial ceilings." I handed the microphone back to Arthur, whose smile had become notably strained. "Thank you again for this recognition. And to my former colleagues, remember that you have more power than you think. Use it wisely." As I walked back to my table, the silence was deafening. Then Margaret started clapping, followed by Tom, then others throughout the room. Not everyone joined in, but enough did to make the message clear. After the dinner, Arthur approached our table as Rebecca and I were preparing to leave. "Amy, could I have a word?" Rebecca excused herself diplomatically, leaving Arthur and me alone for the first time since my resignation. "That was quite a speech," he said, his tone unreadable. "It was honest. I suppose I deserved that." He looked tired, defeated in a way I'd never seen before. "You know, we're restructuring the leadership team. If you ever wanted to come back." "Arthur, stop." I stood up, meeting his eyes directly. 6 months ago I might have been interested in proving something to you. Tonight, I realized I don't need to prove anything to anyone except myself. The company is struggling without you. The company is struggling because you made decisions based on family loyalty instead of business sense. That's not my problem to solve anymore. I picked up my purse and the Crystal Award, which felt surprisingly heavy in my hands. "I hope things work out for Alden Ventures. I really do. But my chapter there is closed." Walking out of that ballroom, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't expected. The scared, overlooked woman who'd once desperately wanted Arthur's approval was gone. In her place stood someone who knew her value and wasn't afraid to demand it be recognized. Rebecca linked her arm through mine as we reached the parking garage. "So, how does it feel to have the last word?" I smiled, genuinely happy for the first time all evening. Like freedom. The drive home was quiet, both of us processing the evening's events. When I finally walked through my front door, Joseph was waiting with a cup of tea and a questioning look. "How was it?" "Perfect," I said and meant it. It was absolutely perfect. That night, I placed the Crystal Award on my bookshelf next to a photo from my first day at Horizon Tech. Two symbols of the same journey. One representing where I'd been, the other showing where I was going. The woman in that photo was confident, valued, and unafraid to take up space in the world. She was everything I'd always had the potential to be, just waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. If this story of workplace triumph had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Amy gave that powerful speech at the awards dinner, showing Arthur exactly what he lost. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.